Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. Welcome to the show today, Chester. So happy to have you on. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. I'm Matt Lilly, and this is Chester Elton.
Yeah, great to be here, Matt. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you on the show today. If there are people tuning in live, we were running a little bit late. We apologize for that. But if there are people tuning in, just know that you can ask questions in the chat. We'll be happy to have Chester address those questions. I'm excited to talk to you today because you are known as the gratitude guru.
Actually, Matt, my official title is the Apostle of Appreciation.
Oh God, even knocked it. That was so funny. It knocked my headsets off. The Apostle of. So did you get a promotion last year? I missed that. I guess I didn't get an invite to that party.
So Adrian Gostick is my wonderful co-author and dear friend. We wrote a book years ago called The Carrot Principle.
Oh, okay.
And we both grew up in Canada. So when the Toronto Globe and Mail, which is Canada's largest newspaper, reviewed the book, the reviewer said, without question, Adrian Gostick and Chester Elton are the apostles of appreciation. And I liked it so much that I'm keeping it,
Okay, so we're going to dive into gratitude and appreciation today. That's, a big part of why we wanted you to come on the show, because I can't think of a more important time in at least in my lifetime and probably in your time, where gratitude and appreciation is so much needed.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Because there's such almost lack of it in the general sense of the media and social media. And, just in the world, it seems like we're not as generous with kindness as maybe we used to be. And so it's great to have this subject to come in. And I'll even ask your perspective on that. I know you're an apostle, but if you were a regular human, being, what would you be seeing?
Well, first off, can I get an amen? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think you're spot on when you talk about the fact that there's just such a lack of grace and kindness in the world right now. We seem to be so divided on so many different issues, right?
Right.
I've been reading a wonderful, actually an audiobook that I highly recommend by a gentleman named Arthur Brooks. And the title would lead you to believe it's a religious book. It's not. It's called Love Your Enemies. He's actually an economist, also a very devout Catholic. And so he doesn't leave the spiritual side to the side. What he talks about, though, is that we've developed a culture of contempt. And the number one way you can tell if you're being treated with contempt is when you're talking to somebody and they roll their eyes, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's that Matt Lilly guy again. and so he says, we've got to get past that where we listen and we debate. He says, debate is really important. And I'm a big believer of that. He makes a point that I'd never thought of before. He says, Pepsi never wants to put Coke out of business because Coke makes Pepsi better. Competition makes us better. Now, the point that will get to gratitude and kindness is he says, so we counter contempt and we say, well, you need to be more tolerant. He says, think about that for a minute. If I said, how's your marriage going? And you said, my wife, she tolerates me.
Right. An exciting time for a husband.
Yeah. You'd say you immediately need to go to counseling. You know what I mean? There's something. So he says, we've got to get to the point where we actually embrace different ideas. We embrace different people. We embrace a different way of getting to happiness, which is what we all want to get to. So how does gratitude and kindness play a role in that? Well, I've become a big fan of Buddhism. I'm a very devout Christian, but what I love about Buddhism is you can be a Christian Buddhist. You don't have to.
Right. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're going to get off on trails. I can already tell. But Adyashanti wrote a book that, he's Buddhist, and he wrote a book about, I think it was called Resurrecting Christ or something about. And so he had talked about, he had the opposite experience, right? He went from being Buddhist and then he really studied and dove into Christianity. And he said it was just, it's a better experience. He's a better Christian a better Buddhist because he understood now what Christ was about. I was like, interesting how that works.
I think the foundation of every major religion that you can think of is love. It absolutely is.
Totally. Right. God is love, right? I mean, that's what
we preach.
That's what it is, right?
It's unfortunately not what we tend to live. It's what we believe, right?
Right.
So I read Jay Shetty's book, I Think Like a Monk, which I
Uh-huh.
just adored. And by the way, he endorsed our book, Leading with Gratitude, which
Oh,
was
nice.
just wonderful of
Yeah,
him
yeah.
to do that. He said, in the Buddhist philosophy, every word that comes through your mouth needs to pass through three doors or three gates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the first one is it true?
Mm-hmm.
Is what you're saying true? The second one, is it necessary?
Mm-hmm.
Which is also a great question to ask yourself. The
Mm-hmm.
third one is it kind?
Right.
So I'm a big fan of trying to stay healthy, particularly as I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting older. And so I was at Stretch Lab today. That you go
Oh,
in
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they stretch you
Yep.
because
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
too
yeah.
lazy to stretch ourselves, right? So
Yes.
anyway,
This show brought to you by Stretch Lab at
yeah,
Stretch
yeah,
Lab.
yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm
In
kidding.
Summit, New Jersey, go to the Stretch Lab in
In
Summit, New Jersey.
Summit, New Jersey. All right.
So
Perfect.
here's the point. I'm talking to my stretchologist. I love that
Mhm.
they call themselves that. And as we thought about it, I said, for example, I mean, you've got a friend, he gets married, they have a baby, and there's no question this is an ugly baby, right? And your friend comes and says, here's our baby. What do you think? So you go through those, you say, it's an ugly baby. Is that true? Yes. Is it necessary? No. It's to tell
Right,
him that
right.
and is it
Is it
kind?
kind?
No.
No. Yeah, of
So
course
you
not.
say things like, wow, that's a baby. Good for you. And I think that so often, whether it's because we can do things anonymously on social media, or
Right.
we're just in sound bites everywhere
Hmm.
we go, we can say something that's cutting and cruel and drop the mic and walk away.
Right.
And we don't embark in any kind of conversation. So with Jay Shetty's book, there's a challenge there to develop your own personal mantra.
Hmm.
And so I thought, well, I'm going to take that challenge. And so my
Hmm.
mantra every morning, the Buddhist part of me that wakes up,
Hmm. Yes.
I say, be kind,
Hmm.
be grateful,
Hmm.
and be of service.
Right.
The family I grew up in, my grandpa, my father used to say, the only people you don't love are people you haven't served. When you
Oh,
serve someone,
right.
you get to know their story, you get to know where they
Hmm.
come from, you're giving of yourself, they're giving back to you, right?
Hmm.
And it's served me well, because it's so easy to wake up and say, oh, those people, whoever those people are in
Right.
your life. And
Right.
and Arthur Brooks makes a great point where he says, look, we've gotten to the point in so many phases of our lives where if people don't agree with us, it's not just
Hmm.
that they don't agree with us, they're bad people and they're stupid.
Right. And
And
they're
which
against us. I mean,
right.
I would even
And
say they're against us. So
yeah,
we have to be against them, right?
yeah. If you're not with us, you're
You're
against us.
against
Right.
us. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And he says, of course, that's clearly not true. You know,
Right.
we've got friends all through the political spectrum that we love
Hmm.
dearly.
Hmm.
Do we agree with them on a lot of things? No, we don't.
Right.
And you know what? And that's great.
Mhm.
Think how awful it would be if everybody agreed with everything you said every day. I mean, if everybody believed what you believe,
No,
you know,
no, no. Now let's not go too
yeah.
far. I think if my wife agreed with everything that I said every day, I'm not thinking that's such a bad experience. I'm thinking I'm feeling pretty good. But
Yeah.
I
And
get what
see,
you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah, there's no growth in that. There's no
e-
growth in that.
exactly. And there's the danger, right?
Mhm.
When we have particularly business leaders where they've
Right.
surrounded themselves with people that all they tell them is,
Yes,
you're a
yes, yes.
genius, you're
Yeah.
brilliant, you're right,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's the emperor has no clothes.
Hmm.
So this idea of, look, love your enemies.
Hmm.
It's easy to love people that love you. I mean, if you're a Christian,
Right.
that's the Christ sermon, right?
Right.
What benefit it you if you love those that love you? There's no growth there.
Right.
That's not noble. Of course you
Right.
should.
Right.
It's loving your enemies and understanding where they come from, and they want to
Hmm.
get where you want to go. They just want to get there a different way.
Right.
Because I honestly believe, at the end of all our stories, the one thing we all have in common is we want to be happy. And
And
my definition of happiness is going to be different than yours. And you know what?
right.
That's good.
Right. Happy and I would say I think, under happiness maybe is to be loved, to love and to be loved, right? Because
Yeah.
that's kind of in alignment with, God or the universe but Christ, definitely, right? To love and be loved. So
And a great
and
bumper sticker. You can put that right on a bumper.
that's so funny. And so how do we on the show a lot of times we talk theory, but then we also talk practicality of how do we do that? Because it's easy to say that I should love my neighbors or love my enemies. In practice, that's obviously super challenging, or they wouldn't be my enemies, right? If I loved
Right.
everyone, then they aren't my enemy. So how do we, give it, or do you have some examples in your own life of, or with clients that you worked with of kind of that? Here's kind of people in two opposite camps, and how did you get them to either bridge or bridge yourself to kind of have a deeper understanding of the other?
Yeah, no, listen, very insightful question. And I appreciate it very much because I'm a big believer in knowing people's stories.
Hmm.
You have a story, I have a story, and that story's precious to us.
Hmm.
It's who we are. It's how we've become who we are.
Yeah, you could
And
almost say
so,
it's exactly who we are,
yeah,
right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
we are the sum of the stories that we've been told or told ourselves, or the culture, right? I mean, we are a product of our environment, almost literally.
Yeah. And so once I know your story, I'm going to be a lot more open to understanding why you act the way you do, why you
Mm.
believe what you do, and what your rituals are. And I think particularly here in North America, where the population is so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting. We were on a wonderful holiday. That's the Canadian in me coming out, by the way. We don't go on vacation; we go on a holiday.
I like it, but it sounds so much more pleasant.
It,
Canadians are
it,
so
it
much more pleasant. I think Canadians do have a little bit I've never been to Canada, but the Canadians I have on the show are lovely people.
yes,
So
they
holiday
are.
sounds so much, vacation sounds like a mandatory thing that you have to, like, I have to go get a colonoscopy. I have to take a vacation, right? But when I go on holiday, that just the word is happier, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
just like, let's go on holiday.
let's go on a holiday.
A holiday.
Where are you going to holiday? Let me tell
Exactly.
you. Yeah,
Exactly. It seems like I should get Christmas presents right
yeah.
off the bat.
So anyway, we went
Yes.
on this bike and boat trip in the
Oh,
Netherlands, which,
oh, beautiful.
by the
Yeah.
way, it was a third time we've done it. They're
Oh,
amazing holidays, where
okay.
you're on a boat. That's your hotel, and you go from city to city. And of course, in the Netherlands, there's canals everywhere. And then
Uh-huh.
you cycle all day with a bunch of your friends. You go for a bike ride with your friends, and you've got a guide, and he takes you to various museums
And,
and tells you the different
and,
histories.
and, and I am curious about this. So when you say bike ride, is this like something that a lay person could do, or is this like you're doing, 20, 30 miles a day type thing?
Yeah, it's not the Tour de France. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. And by the way, you can get an electric bike. So
Oh, okay. So do I have to wear the tights, or can I, I
you
mean, is
can
the
really
tights
dress
required?
anywhere you want. And you do you'll do like 30 miles in a day, but think about it. You're on a bike for 10 hours. I mean,
Oh,
you're not,
wow.
yeah. I mean, your heart rate is never going to get above 80.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally if you remember when you were a little kid and you and your
Mhm.
buddies jumped on your bikes and went for a bike ride. That's
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
is.
But for 10 hours a day?
Well, but you're stopping for meals and you're stopping at
Oh,
museums and you're
oh,
stopping at,
okay, okay. So when you say 10, sorry, I'm getting too specific here, but
yeah.
when you're talking 10 hours a day, you're talking like you leave the ship at 9 in the morning, and then you're wandering around in the
Yeah.
Netherlands, and
Yeah.
and you're getting back on the ship 10
Yeah,
hours later. You're not riding straight through for 10 hours. That doesn't sound like
right.
that doesn't sound like a holiday to me. So I'm trying to ascertain what kind of this is joy. Okay,
Right.
so
Yeah. No,
you're
and
riding
very
around looking at
pleasant.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
yeah.
you bike with your buddy and you stop for lunch and
And you get an e-bike if you want.
and you get an
So
e-bike and
all right, perfect.
in your case you might want one that says Harley Davidson on it. I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
But my point is it was really interesting being in the Netherlands that it was fairly homogeneous. It really was. I mean, you could
Hmm.
see the diversity. There were obviously
Hmm.
Asian Dutch, and there were
Hmm. Hmm.
African Dutch and Caribbean Dutch and so on. But for the most part, it was fairly homogeneous. Um,
Right.
in the States, gosh, you go to work, and I mean, I was at my beloved New Jersey Devils hockey game last night, and we've won 8 in a row, by the way, for
Oh,
those of you that go hockey.
wow.
Yes,
Wow.
completely unexpected and beyond delightful.
I don't think
Um,
we've ever played hockey in Kansas. I'm just guessing, but I'll.
yeah. Well, what was really interesting is our starting goaltender with our 5
Mhm.
starting players were 6 different countries.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
It was fascinating. I mean,
Hmm.
there was a guy from Switzerland, a guy from Sweden, a guy from the US, a guy from Canada, a guy from the Czech Republic,
Hmm.
and a guy from Canada. There you go. I knew there was a Canadian in there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, they all grew up differently. Now they all grew up with hockey. That's what they've got
Right.
in common.
That's
And the
their
hockey
common bond.
community is very, very tight. The thing is different languages, different food, different culture, different
Mhm.
traditions.
Right.
And so if you really want to understand people that you may not particularly agree with or even particularly like, know their stories, know their traditions. There's always 2 things you can talk about that are
Hmm.
very safe.
Religion and
And
politics.
politics.
Right.
Yeah, no, you can talk about family
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
you can talk about food.
Yep. Oh, that's
Everybody's
a good
proud of
point.
their food.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's
Everybody's
true.
proud of
Yeah.
their
I
food.
haven't thought about the food one. Family,
Yeah.
it's kind of a layup, but yeah, the food, that's interesting.
And we're business authors, so I always encourage leaders, say, look, ask the people on your team, if you're a new leader and you don't know the team particularly well, say, hey, where did you come from? How did you get here?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to accomplish while you're here? And
Mm-hmm.
where do you want to be in 2 or 3 years?
Right.
Boy, if you know the answers to those 4 questions, you know a lot.
And I've taken lots of workshops and lots of leadership courses and stuff throughout my lifetime, but I was actually somebody that came on the show, and I can't remember which guest it was, but basically we were talking about, because they were an expert in kind of how to not do small talk, how to get into actual, because it's like everybody's tired of small talk.
Right.
So, but they were questions like you were talking about, which isn't what do you do for a living, right? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, because it turns on that part of the person's character, and so then they're kind of in the work mode, and it's But if you're talking about the things you're talking about, family, food, where are you from, how'd you get here? Now these are conversation questions, right? So they're not just how are you, and how's your day, and what do you do for a living, and
how about the weather? Yeah.
how about the weather? Yes.
How about those devils? That's actually a great conversation starter. But yeah, and to your point is, and then what's really key to the whole process, as we would say in Canada,
Yes.
is listen. Be a good listener. Ask good questions and listen.
Mm-hmm. And
people love to tell you their stories. If I said, "Hey, Matt, tell me about how did you end up with this podcast? This is amazing."
Yeah, and that is an interesting story in and of itself. But we'll save that. You can interview me someday. So I'm, even though you are the guru of gratitude and the apostle of appreciation,
yeah.
I am sure that there's been some people that you did when you first met them. Maybe they weren't your people when you first met them, but then through your own technology, your own, you're an author, you write these books about how to do this. Do you have an example of, like, you don't have to give the person's name and email address, but kind of how you bridge some more difficult or conflictual type relationships?
Another great question.
Mm-hmm.
So let me tell you a little bit of my background that'll help you understand.
Yes,
my
please
answer.
do. Yes, please do.
So I grew up with 4 older brothers, so 5
Mm-hmm.
boys. I always like to joke that I have 4 brothers, and each one of my brothers has 4 brothers. It's a huge family. Anyway,
right.
In a ridiculously happy household. My father and mother were married for 65 years, and my dad was as smitten and as in love with my mother in their 65th year of marriage as he was when they met in high school. I mean,
that's amazing and rare. Amazing and rare.
And becoming more rare.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. In our family, we sort of have this philosophy that we've never met a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, when we meet people, even though they can be off-putting,
mm-hmm.
our assumption is to assume positive intent.
Wow.
And so, and we talk about that in our book, Leading with Gratitude, assume
mm-hmm.
positive intent.
Mm-hmm.
When you meet somebody and they're really upset or they seem to be angry or whatever, there's a reason for that. And there's probably a good reason for it. Right? They're having trouble with a kid. They got a speeding ticket, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so you treat them with a little bit of grace, and you treat them in assuming positive intent. One of the easiest ways to tamp down your anger and annoyance and your spirit of contempt is when people are late for a meeting, like I was for our meeting today,
and you notice how calm and poised I am.
You were wonderful. You were wonderful about it. And that is that there was probably a reason for that. And, in my case, it was for whatever reason, this never made it on my calendar. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yep.
And so it wasn't that I don't want to talk with you and have this wonderful and enjoyable conversation that we're having. It just dropped off the end of the table for whatever reason.
Right.
Now, you could have taken the tact and say, geez, I reminded him like 5 times. Right? I mean, how many emails do I have to send? I mean, all the Canadians I've ever met, this is going to be the one Canadian that's a complete jerk.
Right. I'm going to petition the embassy and have you thrown out. Right.
Right. Instead, it was like, hey, gosh, so sorry. Do you want to do it now? Yes, I have to jump on and we'll be lifelong friends. I'm sure we'll plan a holiday together.
Well, I would love that. I'm thinking about this biking thing in the Netherlands.
We do it every other year, so you got time to
okay. I want the invite.
Yeah, and so my point is that how do you turn it around? Well, I think it starts with your attitude going in.
Mhm.
And if you go in with the attitude of, I'm going to assume positive intent, I'm going to assume that I've never met a stranger. I'm going to assume that once we get to know each other, we will probably find enough in common that we will find it quite enjoyable, quite
Mhm.
delightful.
Mhm.
You know, for example, last night I took a dear friend of mine and his wife to their first NHL hockey game.
Mhm.
Nothing is more fun for me than to take people to their first NHL hockey game, because the only people that don't love hockey are people that haven't been to a hockey game with me.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because
I like the caveat. I like the
yeah,
caveat.
because I'm telling you, you know, once you know the intricacies and you understand a little of the history and you
Are you
see
like a
why.
sports announcer? Are you like the sports announcer at the game? Is that kind of what you do?
I'm like the sort of the hockey whisperer, you know, as things happen, I kind of whisper. I said, now the reason he did that is
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they brought some friends. They brought
Uh-huh.
a couple that there. Well, right out of the gate, he tells me that his friend is a New York Rangers fan.
Oh, mhm.
Well, that is not the way you introduce your friend to a Devils fan, right?
Right, right, right.
It's like saying, you know, I'm a
Your
Boston
team
Red Sox
sucks.
fan. Oh, by the
Right.
way, my
Right.
dad used to play for the Yankees. I mean,
Right, right,
you were immediately causing conflict.
right.
So I thought, okay, well, he seems like a nice guy, even though he's got this
At least he's got all this one flaw, but other than that, he
yeah,
seems okay.
he seriously made some bad choices in life.
Right.
Haven't we
Right.
all? You know?
Right. Right.
And turned out that he was, you know, a hockey fan, you
Right.
know, and beyond delightful. So I could immediately, you know, within a very short period of time, I was willing to forgive the fact that he cheered for
Sure,
our
the wrong
trial.
team.
Yeah, and even though I'm sure he's going to live a good life, is going to burn in hell. You know, I mean, I just know that.
Right, exactly. And that's okay because you can still love
And
him,
that's
right?
okay. You know, hell needs customers too, right? So
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna
think
visit a lot of my friends there, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. And it is so interesting that you just say, hey, look, there's going to be things about this person that I'm not going to particularly care for, whether it's their,
Mhm.
you know, their take on politics or their take on life or their take on raising their children or where,
Mhm.
you know, parts of the country, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
The thing is that we've always got more in common than we think.
Mhm.
And you know, we all love our food. We all love our
Right.
families. We all, at least I hope, you know, we do.
Mhm.
And you find that common ground and you say, hey, this is a relationship that's worth investigating. This is a story that's worth hearing. And with my upbringing, that you've never met a stranger is everybody's story is worth knowing.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you've met people where you kind of kind of an odd duck, you know,
Right.
and
Mhm.
then you start hearing their story and you say, wait a minute, let me get this straight.
Right.
Your parents swam from the shores of
Right.
Vietnam to a
Right.
dinghy in the middle of the ocean, and then you know,
Actually, one of my good friends, that is his story. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you think now, once you know that story, you never look at that person the same.
Right.
There's
It
so
gives
much
you, yeah.
respect. Yeah,
Right.
there's a guy here in Summit, Asian fellow,
Mhm.
who has an umbrella stand. Like you know,
Mhm.
where are you sitting in the world right now?
In Kansas, Wichita, Kansas. So we're
Wichita.
like,
Hey, my
yeah.
son used to live in Wichita. The
Is that right?
Shockers. Yeah, the
Yeah, Wichita
Shockers.
State Shockers. That's where I went to school. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
a great town. I loved
Yeah. Yeah.
Wichita. I loved
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
a lot. Anyway, um, he's a guy that's the umbrella cart. You know, it's a
Mhm.
cart that's got that
Mhm.
blue and yellow umbrella, and he sells hot dogs and sodas. And
Oh, okay. Okay. He
right.
doesn't sell
And
umbrellas. Okay.
no,
Said
and
umbrella car. I get it now. Yeah.
and you can see him all over town. You know, he's outside the football games and the
Yeah.
lacrosse games and outside the parks and you see him and he's doing his tai chi and well, you get to know a little bit of his story. I mean, he's a first generation immigrant. Actually, doesn't
Mhm.
speak English particularly well,
Right.
and he's got 4 kids that all went to amazing universities. They went to
Oh,
Stanford, they
wow.
went to Michigan, they went to
Wow.
Yale,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you go, see, that's not just a guy that sells hot dogs.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
guy that, and he's there, by the way, and he works like 10, 12-hour days.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
pouring rain. He's there.
Right.
And you think, why? There's nobody. And yet he's got a customer base like the lawn guys come because you can get
Yeah.
2 hot dogs, chips and soda for $5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my son and I, when we'd mow the lawns together, I'd say, hey, you want to go for a working man's lunch? He'd go, yeah. And we'd go down to
Right.
the
Yeah.
umbrella,
Yeah.
we'd
Yeah.
get 2 hot dogs, a soda, and chips, right?
Oh, I love it.
And you'd see his kids stop by and they'd wear their t-shirts, Stanford. And you kind of go,
Right.
you know what? That is a remarkable man. I mean,
Right.
not just a good man,
Mhm.
which he obviously is.
Mhm.
He's a remarkable man.
Markham. Right. Right.
And do you want to buy his hot dogs?
Well, sure. Yes. Right.
Absolutely, you want to buy his
Right.
hot dogs,
Right.
even if you
Yeah.
don't eat them.
Exactly. Exactly. It's kind of like the lemonade stand or something that the kids put
Yeah,
on, right? You want to
my
do it just because it's the right thing to do.
yeah. My dad would always say, you never pass the kids' lemonade stand. You
Exactly.
always buy, and even if it's the worst lemonade ever made,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. You still, yes, I get
And
that.
why do we do it? Because it's kind,
Right.
and you want to be encouraging.
Hmm.
And there's some little kid that set up this stand, and he's afraid that nobody's going to buy his lemonade, and you stop by and
Right.
buy his lemonade, and you've made his day.
Exactly. Exactly.
For $1. How could
Right.
you,
Right.
when was the last time for $1? You made
Right. You made
somebody's
somebody
day.
that happy.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
the return on that investment is exponential, right?
Right. And so, so I'm going to tell a quick story then. I was at a business conference in Sydney, Australia, and it was 2 or 3,000 people from all over the world. It was for business leaders, and I ended up just randomly, you have on your, when you go to a conference, you got on your really great, here's my name and here's where I'm from, right? Like a big tag, like, so you see everybody else with the tags, and I was at the hotel I was staying, and I was just going through the breakfast buffet, or I think, or something, and there was another gentleman, and I can't remember if he asked me to sit down or I asked him, but it's one of those deals where you want to meet people, right? It's a social thing too. And so the two of us sit down. I'm from the States, he's from Iran, right? And it was one of those, and I don't remember the whole conversation, but the things we focus on were like family and, work to some degree, but really family. And the funny thing was, partway through that conversation, he said, I just want to be clear that as an Iranian, I don't hate Americans. And most of us in Iran don't hate Americans. In fact, if you really look at America's done a lot of great things for Iran, which is eliminating our enemies. We don't have to go to war. He was like, right? He was
the
like,
Americans will go kill all those guys.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, the Americans will go do it. We don't have to do anything. We just stay inside our walls and we're good. And so we had a great breakfast and we had a nice talk. And I would have never had that experience had I not been traveling and been open to other, how to, here's this person, he's just a person, right? But when I have found, just like you're saying, once you kind of get under whatever conflict may be on the surface, we're all human beings. We all have fears. It's just maybe around different things, right? Maybe I'm concerned that my family, supporting my family. Well, everybody, if they have a family, wants to make sure their family's taken care of for the most part, right? I mean, so there's certain common things that just are all there. But why is it so important if we're, we've kind of come through this time of easy to isolate. I found that I went from being extroverted to introverted, which was still is a unique experience for me. So I became less social. But through that, why is it important to connect with people? Why is it important to do this? Why is it important to want to build these bridges with other cultures, with other people, with people that we would consider are, love your enemy? Why is it important for me to love my enemy?
Well, there are 100 reasons. I'll give you, sort of my top 3 or 4. One is it keeps you safer. It's a safer place to be. Absolutely. Keeps you safe. You mentioned something, and I'm a huge believer that a big part of your education, and you should encourage your kids as they get older, is travel.
Right.
Go visit other countries.
Right.
It's the old Billy Joel song. The Russians love their kids too.
Yep.
I mean, they do.
Yep.
It's so interesting. I had some friends that were very, very, I want to say this in a kind way.
I can add color to it, so you can be kind to your friends.
Well, they didn't travel a lot,
right?
And they were in a very homogeneous community in their part of the United States.
When you say homogeneous, you mean white, right?
Pretty much.
Okay. For everybody listening, I'll be the color man. That means white.
You can interpret, yeah. and we're very suspect, and by the way, with a lot of good reason, right? This is post 9/11 and
right, yep,
and Afghanistan and
right.
Iraq, and very suspect of Muslims,
right?
Just in general, and it wasn't they were suspect of Iranians or Iraqis or Afghanis. They were suspect of Muslims. That's where they all fit.
Yep.
And so we worked together at a company, and I traveled quite extensively, and I traveled to Singapore, went to Malaysia, and had a stop off in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and I come back and they said, hey, so where you been? And so I named these things. Oh, well, did you feel safe? I said, have you ever been to Singapore? Singapore's like the safest place on the
Mhm.
planet. I mean, you're
Right.
safer in Singapore than you are getting locked in your local bank's vault. You know. And they said, well, yeah, but I mean, but Malaysia, I mean, that's a
Right.
Muslim country.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So is Dubai. So
Mhm.
is Saudi Arabia. I
Mhm.
said, you know what? I have to tell you, the most gracious hosts, the most wonderfully family-focused people. Now, I didn't meet them all,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean,
Yep. Right.
and they said, you know, they invited me into their home to eat. The food was
Mhm.
wonderful.
Mhm.
The call to prayer 6 times a day, I found very affirming.
Right. Yep.
And was invited into my friend's mosque, and he said, "Look, you can just sit there, or you can participate." I said, "Look, I'm a joiner." What do
Right.
you do?
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Exactly.
And to have that experience, he goes, "Well, you're a Christian." I go, "Yeah, look, I've got Jewish friends too, by the way, and
Right.
I go to
Right.
synagogue with them."
Right.
The idea of travel and spending time with different
Mhm.
languages and different food and different cultures, and you come to the
Mhm.
realization that you did with your experience in Sydney, Australia, that you know what, we all love our kids. We all want to be safe. We all want to be happy. And the more we know about each other, the safer it is to have those conversations. That understanding goes up, kindness goes up, safety goes up. You know,
Mhm.
if we all stay in our silos and we've got
Mhm.
people telling us those people over there are your
Right.
enemy, and you've never
Right.
met them,
Right.
I go, now why are they my enemy? Well,
Mhm.
because they believe differently than you do. Yeah, you got to give me more than that.
Right.
You know. And so, you know, again, it comes back to take the time, be curious. You
Mhm.
want to be a great leader, you want to be just a better person,
Mhm.
be curious. And this is why your podcast, I'm sure, is
Mhm.
so fulfilling for you, is you get to
Mhm.
ask a lot of questions.
Yes, I do.
Well,
Yes.
and then you get to listen to the answers, and then you get to chip in,
Mhm.
you know, your 2
Right.
cents
Yeah. Yeah.
and your take on Buddhism and
Right.
travel
Yep. Right.
and so on. Um, it's very healthy, and we've got to understand that it's a healthy debate.
Mhm.
I've never argued anybody
Mhm.
into agreeing with me. I've never shouted anybody
Right.
into agreement.
Right. Right.
It's never going to happen, you know.
Right.
So rather than take that route, which clearly is a recipe for failure,
It doesn't work.
is
Yeah.
say, well, tell me why.
Mhm.
Why is that important to you? Why do
Mhm.
you believe that way? And as they start to tell you about their upbringing, where they were in some of their life experience, you go, you know what, I get it. Not
Mhm.
my experience. That was your experience. Like, I get how you got there. Would you consider this and this and this and this? And we slowly come out of our corners. And unlike boxers, so that we can, you know, pummel each other, we come out of our corners and we come to greater understanding. And it
Mhm.
all starts with, do I know your story, and a dialogue and curiosity, and more than anything, just listening. And that, by the way, is an incredible expression of gratitude.
Mm.
It just is.
Mhm.
The fact that I would ask you the question and then listen, I
Right.
think is an act of gratitude. By the way, one other title that I'd be remiss if I didn't share with you.
Mhm.
You know, it's always better when somebody else gives you the moniker or the nickname, right? You can't give yourself a nickname. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
We were at a conference and we were talking about working through anxiety at work, which is, you
Uh-huh.
know,
You're
our
one of your
latest book,
books. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how gratitude plays he goes, you know, it's like you're the Dalai Lama of workplace trauma.
You got all these great one-liners. The Dalai Lama of workplace trauma.
I mean, come on,
Yes.
that's very clever, right?
That is, yeah, that's super clever. You got to love the Dalai Lama.
Well, who doesn't? Yeah. And by the way,
he and I share a birthday. That's why, I mean, I have a special effect. I'm like, well, I've got to be special because I share a birthday with the Dalai Lama.
you know, it's so funny because I kept thinking there's something about him.
Yes. And he and I look a lot alike.
Absolutely. Now, by the way, back to,
Yes.
I'd like to call him my friend Arthur Brooks. We've never met, but I've now
Right.
read 2 of his books and looking forward to the third.
Mhm.
He is good friends with the Dalai Lama, which makes me so envious, you know. And before I die, I want to say, you know, my buddy, the Dalai Lama.
Lama. Yes.
Like, I want to just pick up the phone and say, hey, Dolly, it's me. You know?
Right. I just wanted to say hello. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Right.
How's it going? You know?
How's it going? How's your day?
He said, why do we love and revere the Dalai Lama?
Mm.
Now, if you know the Dalai Lama story, at 16 years
Yep.
old, China
Right.
comes in, kicks him out of Tibet. They
Right.
have no army. They have no way to defend themselves. And they clearly just wanted the natural resources, and they expel them from Tibet.
Right.
Now, So what did
But
the
he
Dalai Lama?
didn't he have to sneak out in the middle of the night though? Didn't he have to
Yeah, oh
escape?
yeah,
I mean, it wasn't just that they kicked him out. It was they were going to kill him. I thought was the
yeah,
thing.
they were
But
hunting
maybe
him.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so he literally had to go in the dark, literally the dark of night, and get out of the country
Right.
for fear. And I think really it was his the people around him that said, "We got to get you out." And I think he may even had some resistance to leaving, but they had to get him out for his own physical safety.
Sure. So here's the thing. So why do we revere the Dalai Lama? Now, when the Dalai Lama was exiled and ran for his life,
Yeah.
basically,
Yep.
did he try to raise an army to take the country back over?
No,
Did he cry foul? Did he call for other armies to come? I mean, was it death to the oppressors?
Right. Right.
No, in fact, and I didn't know this about the Dalai Lama until I read this wonderful book by Arthur Brooks. He said the Dalai Lama starts every day in prayer. And the first thing he prays for is for the health and happiness and well-being of the Chinese people and their leaders. Now, come on. Now that is loving your enemy at a level that you and I will never get to. But we love him, and he's so revered, not because of his anger and his resentment, but because of his love. And see, that to me, when I read that, I thought, okay, now I get it. Like, now I get it.
And isn't that the truth of any great hero in our history? For any great hero, Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, it's all about it's all about justice through love, not justice through retaliation, right? Or equality through love, not through retaliation. And so yeah, when you're talking about the Dalai Lama, that makes complete sense. It's again, how do we do that in our own personal lives? Because we don't have we can hate people in abstract, but in reality, when we actually are with the people in the way you're with the people, or talking about being with the people, it all kind of starts to melt. Even if it's just a little bit, it starts to melt, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's, well, I super don't like that guy, but you know what? I appreciate his passion, or I appreciate his XYZ, right?
Yeah,
you can always find something.
Exactly. And the point is it's just a better way to live. Holding a lot of resentment, anger. It's one of the reasons that it's just so hard, I think, in most political discussions, is it immediately gets hostile.
Right.
And we've got to figure out a way to start with basic stuff and just say, hey, look, I think we all want the same thing.
Right.
We want a good paying job. We want to be safe. We want to have decent health care. We want to be able to afford a good education. We want to make enough money that we can take a holiday. Right. And enjoy our lives and say, okay, now there are different philosophies on how to get there. And we can agree that some work and some have worked and some didn't work, and some, but if that's the goal, and that's where we want to get, well, then let's figure out how we can work together to get there. And you may not get everything you want, and they might not get it. It's so funny. I'm such a big sports fan. I remember we were mentoring these kids in East Orange in New Jersey, and orange is our color because of the carrot, right? And so the fact that I was mentoring these kids in East Orange was beyond kismet, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I remember one of our kids played basketball. He was really good. It was really fun. Inner city basketball is just the best. It's so passionate. The kids are flying all over the floor. And so there was a break, and I was walking to get some hot dogs or whatever. And I passed by the referee and I said, hey, ref, you're doing a great job. Both coaches hate you. And he just turned to me with a big smile, gave me a thumb up. He goes, that's my goal, baby. Because if one coach loves you and the other coach hates you, there's clearly
you're not being right.
Seriously, both coaches hate your guts. That's great. So, this whole idea of let's come together and realize that we're all basically after the same things. And of course, there are those outliers that, just want world domination. Well,
Yeah.
99 people out of 100 aren't crazy.
Right.
Although we would like to paint a lot of people, that's great. They're not stupid. They're not bad people. They disagree with you, and that's fine. In fact, that's healthy. That's good.
Right. Yep.
We don't want a one party system.
Right.
We don't want a one religion.
That's called a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Right. Or other names, but yeah.
And how many of those countries thrive. You know, I
Right.
mean, look at North Korea. Is that a country that's thriving? Well, no.
Well, oh, and that's crazy that you bring that up. So we just had a speaker, and I can't remember her name. She was on the Joe Rogan show, and young gal, and she had escaped from North Korea and had this amazing story of like the escape and all of the stuff that she had to go through to basically get to South Korea. But it was via China and
Oh, yeah.
another. I mean, it was and it just, I mean, human trafficking stuff. That it was just all bad. I mean, it basically was like, I don't even believe that you didn't just lose it, or you know. So, but anyway, she gets to South Korea, and she was telling the story of what it was like to live in North Korea, which was isolation, little resources, everybody's starving, nobody lives past a certain age because nobody has, you know, everybody dies of disease or a gunshot wound from the army. And so it was just amazing to hear her talk about this. Basically, in North Korea, everybody's North Korean, or you don't live, you're not allowed to live there, right? There is no diversity. You're North Korean or nothing. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story. It was just funny that literally.
And by the way, I'm fascinated by people that come out of North Korea.
Right.
And it's a good reminder for me to go back and read some of their stories, because it's shameful that the rest of the world has allowed North Korea to happen. Is my view. Right. Millions of people in just dire straits for the benefit of a few.
Right.
I mean, it's just not the way we're wired.
Right.
But you talked about all these horrible things that she went through and sharing her story. If you want to read a great book, and I know you do, there's a book called Tattoos on the Heart. Have you heard of this book?
I have not.
Oh, listen, treat yourself. It's Gregory Boyle is a Catholic priest in LA.
Okay.
And he specializes in getting kids out of gangs. Mostly Hispanic.
Right.
His second book is called Barking to the Choir. And he talks about the street language. Sorry. That's the hockey game in me last night.
Right. I was going to say, I could tell you yelled last night.
Yeah, screaming a lot. And we won. I don't know if I told you we won. Anyway.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank
you for your effort and your participation in that.
Yeah. I always like to say, we won. Like
we won.
To do
well,
it.
you did. You cheered.
Yeah.
Your voice could have been the inspiration in the very last minutes of the game.
Yeah. There are times when I really do believe they're listening to me, because they do what I say, you know.
Exactly.
So he talks about this journey of getting these people out of the gang.
Right.
And you were telling about North Korea. All that you went through. In his second book, Barking to the Choir, which of course preaching to the choir is the expression, right? But it got convoluted.
Right.
She's sitting there, and he says, she's sitting across the desk, and she's telling me about her life, and it's as horrific a life as you can imagine.
Right.
You know, abuse and addiction and homelessness and violence and as she's kind of come to this realization that this is a place where maybe she can change her life, that she can. The first thing they do is they remove your tattoos, so they don't have any gang signs. Oh,
wow. Okay.
On you, and they give you a job. You know, they've got Homeboy Industries, and you can work at the T-shirt place or the cafe and so on. And he says, I'm sitting there, and she's telling me her story, and then she says something so interesting. She says, you know, Father G, I wish you were God. And he says, why would you say that?
Yeah.
He says, because I think if you were God, you'd let me into heaven.
Oh, wow.
And he said, at that moment, as I grabbed her hands, and I just felt that pure love of God, and that pure love that we can have for each other, regardless of the horrific things that we may have been through, or how we disagree on so many things, or how we've lived our lives. Here's this, you know, just tortured soul sitting across from him, and literally saying, because you're listening to my story, because you're giving me an opportunity, I have a chance to get into heaven. I mean, come on.
Right.
We can do that. I honestly believe there is goodness in everyone. And if we just are kind, and if we're just grateful, and if we just serve each other, we hear each other's stories, and we don't have to agree on everything. We don't. But we can be generous, and we can be kind, and we can serve each other. And it just doesn't create, you know, better relationships. It creates better people. It creates better families. It creates better communities. And what is it that your mom and dad taught you when you were like 5 years old? It's always better to give than receive, because when you give, you always receive.
Receive, right. Yep.
And here's the last point, because I know we're running top of the hour here, is let people serve you. And that's hard for a lot of us because
Yeah,
look,
that
we've been
is.
given
Yep.
so much. I don't
Right.
need any help, but I'm happy to help.
Right.
And my counter to that, and I needed to teach this to myself,
Right. That's a
is
tough
I'd
one.
say, when you serve somebody and you have that chance to
Mhm.
help, how does that make you feel? It makes me feel great. I said, why would you deny someone else that feeling in telling them that they don't need to serve you?
Mhm.
Let people serve you. Accept that offering.
Mhm.
It'll make them feel great. It'll make you feel great, and it will deepen your relationship. So, this has been beyond a delightful conversation, by the way.
Yes.
Even though I
Yes.
showed up late, I'm so appreciative that you were so kind.
Yeah.
And and these are principles that Adrian Gossick, my co-author, and I are so passionate about. And this is my shameless plug. If
Mhm.
you're looking for a great read, if you're looking for a roadmap to not just a better life at work, that's what we are. We're business,
Right. Yeah. Business
experts,
consultants. Yeah.
right? It's a better roadmap to life when you lead with gratitude, when you govern with gratitude, right? When you live with gratitude, and when you address mental health in the workplace, and you understand that listen, people are burned out, people are afraid,
Right.
and the best message you can give them is you're not alone, that I'm
Right.
here, and
Right.
I will listen, and if I can help, I'm going to help. But whatever you do, don't go off all by yourself. It's the most dangerous place you can be.
And I think,
And how do we know that? Our communities, right? We travel,
Yep.
we
Right.
understand your family, your food,
Right. Yep.
your sports. It's great.
Yes, and I certainly think that's so poignant, and the key to all messages is isolation is a leads to bad things. I'll just say it that way,
Yeah,
right?
it's very
I
toxic.
and when you most feel like isolating is when you most need to lean into any type of community. Well, I shouldn't say a supportive community or person, right? Just to kind of let the stress, anxiety, if somebody is feeling that, somebody's listening to the show today, what's the best advice you can give them, or what's the best direction or coaching you would give them if they're starting to feel like they're going to isolate or starting to feel like the world's against them? What must they do?
Go serve. Just go do something kind.
Oh, nice.
Help your neighbor rake their leaves.
Right.
Take some cookies across the street.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, I've got a ritual that I love. I wake up in the morning and I take a little quote of kindness or service or something, and I text it to 28 people. I know that sounds crazy, but you're talking to the Apostle of Appreciation.
Right. You have to. This is
So
part of your mission, right?
and I'll tell you what it does for me, Matt, is it's a little something that I can send to people that I really care about. I started it with a cousin of mine who had a stroke. And I said, I know that there'll be this rush of goodwill and people will bring food. And 2 weeks from now, they're on with their lives.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want you to
They
ever
moved on.
think that you're forgotten. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to send you a little message every day.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some problems with his speech and stuff. I didn't expect him to call me.
Right.
It's 2 years we've been doing this now. And he said, hey, by the way, you can cut it back to once a week. I've got this great folder. I said, great. Well, and then he had another stroke.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, I know that you just, I'm going to go back to every day if that's okay. Well, I would tell friends about it. And I say, well, can you put me on the list?
Right.
And it's just such a lovely way for me to start the day, to send a little message to my friends that, hey, I was thinking about you. I care about you. You're in my prayers. And here's a little something to brighten your day with a little challenge. And it's almost always, set a goal today to perform a random act of kindness and just see if that doesn't make your day a little better. And so, get out, think less of, great leaders don't think less of themselves. They think about themselves less, and they think about their people more. So think about somebody else. Get out of your mindset, woe is me, and bake a batch of cookies. Send a handwritten note to somebody, call somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time and say, hey, I was just thinking about you. How's it going? How can I help? I'm telling you, I think service is the roadmap to happiness.
Love that. I love that. You've got so many great one-liners. We just need to capture them all and do you just need to
bumper stickers.
Well, you just need to text that every day. And I think you should expand your text message list. I think you should invite people in. I'm serious. I think you should invite. I know other, people do that, but I was like, I'll be on the. I was like, I want to be on that list, right? So
well, let's wrap up with this. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because Christy, who puts together my calendar, will say, Chester, I can't believe he gave you that opening. You didn't take it.
Right.
We publish a newsletter on LinkedIn twice a month called the Gratitude Journal. And people have opted in. 250,000 people have opted in.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And we highlight, friends that have written books. Like today, we dropped the newsletter today.
Mhm.
Aisha Bursell, it was a dear friend of mine, has written a wonderful book, Design the Long Life You Love. Like we're going to live longer. We're going to live into our 80s.
Yep.
Have we sat down and mapped that out? And
Right.
what's going to make that a meaningful and purposeful life? Well, along with the newsletter, we highlight like our podcasts and different stuff. We just started. It's so funny you mentioned this. We just started. You can text gratitude to a number that's in there. And once a week, I'll send you a gratitude text, a weekly gross of that gratitude from Chester Elton. And it's
I love it. See?
Yeah.
See, and I'm the one that requested. I didn't even know that existed. So where do people?
I forgot about it. I'm so glad that
Well,
because we're just starting to launch it, right?
You are welcome. This is the world. This is your environment saying yes. So how do people get on that list?
Just go to LinkedIn and follow me. You'll see the newsletter jump up, and then you text gratitude and
follow you on LinkedIn. Okay,
I'm
writing this down. Follow you on LinkedIn, which is just Chester Elton, Elton.
Yep.
Is that
Chester
right?
Elton.
On LinkedIn. Okay.
On LinkedIn, and everything's in that newsletter. We also have a wonderful website called thecultureworks.com where we have all our other work. But LinkedIn really is a great place to find all the stuff we're doing. Now, I'm going to pull this up really quick.
I was going to say, yeah. Oh, perfect. That's even easier. Let's do that. Because I was like, well, I've got to go to LinkedIn now. I've got to. So yeah, what's the number?
For a dose of gratitude from Chester Elton, text the word gratitude.
Gratitude.
To 908 460 2820. 2820. That number again, 908-460-2820. Operators are standing
by. And it's just the word gratitude, because I've not actually done this before. I've not done one of those things where you text and so this is literally you just text the word gratitude to this number, and then it puts you on your email, or not your email, but your text list.
Yeah,
it'll put you on the text list. Seeing that on? Are you seeing that on that screenshot? You're seeing that on LinkedIn? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't go on LinkedIn very often. I don't use that very much, but I will definitely. It'll be super easy for me after the show just to dial that number or not dial that number, but text that number, the word gratitude. And I'm there with you, brother. I'm there.
There you go.
We're together, and I will appreciate the weekly. So is it similar to what you do daily? It's just kind of a weekly.
Yeah.
Oh, very, very nice.
And we may up the frequency. We thought we'd start with just once a week, and if we got a good response, we might do more than that. But yeah, and every now and again I quote myself, which is a little egotistical, I think. But it's a lot like the usual suspects, right? It's Mother Teresa, it's Gandhi, it's some of my heroes,
right?
And it's just a lovely way to start your day. And we all need a little more kindness, a little more gratitude. Adrian and I do a lot of executive coaching, and the way I start every coaching engagement is I'll say, look, we've got a formula and we've got a practice, and if you follow it and you're coachable, you'll be a better leader. I mean, you just will be. It's proven, it'll work.
Right.
If that's all we do, we will have failed you. And they go, well, what do you mean by that? I said, I don't want to make you just a better leader. I want you to become the person that you want to be. I want you to be a better father, a better husband, a better partner.
Right.
And so I say, I want you to write this down, and this will be our mantra. And so I say, you got a pencil? No success in business can ever compensate for failure in your home.
Right. Yep.
And we spend so much time at work and we learn all these wonderful principles, then we forget to take them home.
Right.
Listening and teamwork and know your story.
Right.
Say, look, I don't want on my tombstone. This is a Stephen Covey thing, right? I don't want my tombstone to read, "Well, that guy had an amazing podcast."
Right.
He was a great friend. He was a great father. He was of service. He was kind. That's what you want on your tombstone, right?
Right. Made the world a better place. Right.
Exactly. There was a ripple effect there. And so all these principles and all these things that you do, that's what we want to do. We want to create healthier and happier and safer communities, and, children that aren't afraid, that are curious, that can travel, that can, appreciate other cultures and so on. So yeah, so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I know we're over time.
Oh, no. It was, that's the beauty of a podcast. It doesn't have to
go as long as we want.
Right. Well, yes, exactly. We kind of when things are going well, you want to make sure that you get it in. And this was going really well. I just based on watching some of your stuff and reading some of your stuff, I knew that you typically know as a podcast host when when it's going to flow smoothly and when you're going to have to work a little harder. And I knew this was going to be one of those. I was like, this is going to be one of those that I'm not, it's going to be a fun day.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad you think so.
And do you have a podcast as well then?
We do. Anxiety at Work.
Okay.
We bring in all kinds of experts and counselors and business people, and how do they deal with their anxiety and so on. So,
right.
Yeah. And by the way, subscribe to the newsletter. It's ridiculously positive. We have more fun with that thing, and everything you'd ever want to know or is in there. Our podcasts, our texting stuff, our gratitude practices, and it's all free. And I just love the comments. We'll get 85,000 views and hundreds of comments and shares. I love it when you write an article and you've got 50 shares or 75.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, I've got a cousin that could use this.
Right. Totally.
And that's wonderful. And it's just that drop of water. I have a little practice. I carry these little gratitude stones around with me.
Yeah.
And I see somebody doing a great job, or the guy at the car wash, or the the dry cleaner, whatever. And I said, hey, listen, I know that people don't say thank you very much to your job, and I know it's a hard job. And I just want to know that I really do appreciate it. And this is a little token of gratitude from me to you. And then I always say, now, do you know why it's a stone? And they go, well, no, like it's stable, or it's, I said, no, it's a stone because when you throw a stone into a pond, what happens to the water?
Oh, yeah. The ripple effect,
it
right?
Ripples. I said, and that's the same with gratitude.
Oh, nice.
A little act of gratitude ripples. It just does. And so let's be that little stone. Let's be that little pebble. Let's be that ripple. And make somebody's life a little better today. Like this, hopefully this podcast.
Yes, totally. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And, in 30, 45, 60 days, come back on and we'll talk deeper into any topic that you would like to, because I think this is so important that these conversations are happening in the world and they're going out, and, people listening get inspired, and hopefully, do something to make a little bit more of a ripple today because they've listened to what we've done here and your contributions to the world. I certainly appreciate what you're doing and want to wish you well in doing more of it. So thank you so much, Chester, for coming on today.
No, I'm grateful for your time. And listen, when you call back, just make sure it's on my calendar.
Well, I'll just text you. There we go.
There you go. Just text me. You'll have the number.
I love it. Well, have a great day.
You too. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for being a part of the BriteVibe podcast. For more information, go to britevibe.com. That's BRITE vibe, VIBE.com. Thank you for listening.